Yeah, I think, what do you think? Actually, we just start.
Yeah, we'll start.
Okay, great.
Perfect. So, hello everyone. Welcome to our third travel inspiration webinar. I am so happy to have you all here with us today. So, to introduce myself, my name is Akshya and I am from JoinMyTrip and I'll be your host for tonight. To highlight, our travel inspiration webinar is conducted every 2 weeks, giving you ideas on great destinations in the world. So, where you can travel to once the world is back to normal or once coronavirus is over. But our aim is to get you more familiar with specific locations by the end of the webinar. So today's amazing destination is Cuba. Unfortunately, I've not been to Cuba, but it's definitely a country in my list. But my co-host for tonight, Robin, who's also from JoinMyTrip, he has been to Cuba and he's here to share his amazing experiences with us. And most of you would have already met Robin from the previous webinars as well.
Yeah, thanks for the introduction. I'm happy to share my knowledge tonight. I hope you can all enjoy the presentation and get us some more information about Cuba. And of course, you can ask me your questions in the end.
Perfect. And also, we're a bit curious to know how many of you in our audience have been to Cuba. So, Robin, what do you say? Perfect. We can do a quick poll as well.
Yeah, we just do a quick poll, I thought. Okay. So I hope you can see it now. Feel free to share if you have been to Cuba or not.
I have.
36. Okay. Oh, it's okay, interesting. Almost 40 people have been to Cuba, actually, but I'm glad still that you're all here. Maybe you can see some new places. Perfect.
Yeah, we are hoping to, inspire you more. And for those of you who have not, you can get to know what to do in Cuba. So before we start, in order to facilitate a smooth experience for our audience, I would kindly request everyone to keep yourself muted. You will find the mute button in the bottom left corner. And of course, you can unmute yourself during the question and answer round. But please feel free to ask your questions in the chat during the webinar. And also, to make the presentation really interactive, you can share your reactions using emojis during the webinar, and you will find them by clicking the button in the bottom middle. So feel free to try it out whenever you would want. So before we start with our trip, we would like to give you a brief introduction about JoinMyTrip, who we are and what we do. So Robin, could you just explain to everyone?
Yes, of course. So the mission of JoinMyTrip is to connect travelers to go on a trip together. So the trips are planned by the trip leader, taking care of all the organizational stuff that some people might not want to do, and before and during the trip, while finding the trip mates, so the people who just travel with him and enjoy the journey over the platform. So summarized, we empower everyone to experience actually the world with their own eyes. And here you can kind of an expression what it looked like in the past. And over 140,000 people already joined our platform and our community and already are part of JoinMyTrip, and we aim to expand in the future even more, of course. So, so who knows, maybe you will find your future travel buddies on our platform for Cuba. Cuba is a very exciting country, actually. And since many of you have been there already, I think you can all agree it's a very special country. And so, for example, we picked some things for you here. For example, what you can do certainly in Cuba is road trips. There are great things to do since the distances are quite doable. To see most of the country in actually a quite short amount of time. And of course, what Cuba is also famous for are coffee and cigars, but no worries, you don't have to consume them yourself if you don't want to. But you have the opportunities to go on tobacco and coffee farms and to see how the products are made. And the cool thing is you can experience here also the rural side of Cuba, which is pretty great. And you can buy those goods directly for a very fair price there. And as a Caribbean island, Cuba has plenty of wonderful beaches to offer, where you can just enjoy the sun and the water.
Yeah, and of all the things Robin has mentioned, Cuba is also rich in its history and culture. So we highly recommend you to visit the Museum of Revolution and Che Guevara Mausoleum to understand their history. And Cuba, of course, is an island, so you can always find landscapes to hike. And as Robin mentioned earlier, to get to the tobacco and coffee plantations, you can do that by a horse. Cuba is also famous for music and dancing, so you should explore the nightlife in Cuba. There are plenty of bars with live music that will give you a chance to have good drinks and meet new people. So, talking about nightlife, Robin, I'm sure you would have experienced some good food and amazing cocktails as well. So, do you want to share your experience with us?
Yeah, so I think what people comes in mind when they hear about Cuban food is probably a mix between maybe South American dishes and also seafood, since it's an island. Both is actually not that untrue, since rice and beans is also a popular dish in South America. I had it a lot also in Cuba and always liked it. The ropa vieja, in contrast, this is a national dish of Cuba. Translated, it means actually old clothes, and is shredded or pulled stewed beef with vegetables. And the lobster is a controversial thing in Cuba since it's restricted to tourists and is only officially served in the state-owned restaurants. And some people, of course, like it, some not. I personally would eat it again. A fun fact here regarding the red can on the table. So Cuba does not sell Coca-Cola. It's one of the few countries in the world where this is the case, but they also have their own cola brand actually, which is highly recommendable if you are into soft drinks. I drank it a lot. It's pretty good. The Cuba street food is a lot of different things. Very common is pizza and also small burgers. But as a tourist, you might have sometimes be careful about that food.
And also for all those who drink alcohol, I heard that Mojito and Cuba Libre are two famous cocktails in Cuba. And one lesser known cocktail is Canchanchara, which is usually served in a clay cup. So you will actually see the picture there on the upper left-hand corner of the Mojito picture, so the tiny cup there. So in general, you will find a huge variety of food from a very good section of restaurants, because there are a number of tourists who visit Cuba. So after this culinary overview, we come to things to keep in mind when organizing your trip. So more particularly on where to stay in Cuba. So to experience Cuban culture more authentically, you should definitely try to stay in casa particular, so which is just Spanish for private house. It's basically bed and breakfast, but with an experience of staying with a Cuban family in one of their rooms. So Robin, if I recollected correctly, you have stayed in one of that place, right?
Yeah, so I stayed in different ones, and I would always prefer it over hotel. So the families, they were very welcoming, and often they also offer dinner, which is not included in price, but I would definitely go for it since it's a good way to try different foods made by the locals. And the facilities can differ. It's mostly very basic, but also sufficient for some nights, I would say. So there was never a problem with that. So also you should be prepared to speak a little bit of Spanish. At least at the families I visited, they barely spoke English. And on these casa particulares, you see of the blue signs outside. That means they're officially for tourists. And there are also ones with orange signs before the house. These are for Cuban nationals. So as a tourist, you should not go in there because you can get in trouble with these. So you can book them over the internet. There are plenty of sites for it. And also Airbnb offers them, for example. Or if you are there already, you can just ask locals. So usually they're just people who know a friend who has such a casa particular. That's like pretty common there.
Perfect. Thanks for that insight. So in addition to the accommodation, you might also want to plan to rent your car beforehand, which is not a big deal in Cuba. You can easily travel because roads are in good condition and you can access major points of the island through the streets as well. So inside the city, you might want to go for taxi, but we highly recommend you to negotiate on the prices beforehand. And also, if you can, please get a chance to ride in one of the retro cars. So you see see all the pictures there, which I think is really cool. And the other thing that you should definitely try are the collectivos. So they are basically taxis collecting passengers that have a fixed route. So the prices are somewhere in between a bus ride and a normal taxi.
Yeah, so speaking about money, I thought this information might be interesting for some of you. I collected some, let's say average prices, so you can get quite of an understanding on how much money you have to calculate for Cuba, how much to spend there. Short side note here: some people might remember that there have been two currencies on Cuba. One was the one for the locals and one for the tourists. But in January 2021, this changed, and now there's only Cuban pesos. The one for the tourists, they scrapped. It's not valid anymore. And this was just in the end made that tourists pay a little bit of a higher price for the products. So I've been there in 2017. So for me, it was still two currencies. So, but how to get money in Cuba? Actually, what I personally did, take enough cash with me, and I could exchange them in the banks in Cuba. This was no problem. But you can also use the ATMs. Maybe you should ask your bank beforehand if your bank card is supported, but this should also not be a problem. So, and also you usually don't come far with credit cards because taxis and Casa Particulares only accept cash. So you should always have cash with you if you're in Cuba. So in general, one can say that Cuba is a little bit more expensive than other Caribbean countries, but also cheaper than many Western countries, let's say. So the prices here do not necessarily reflect like the actual prices in Cuba, because like I said, they had this monetary reform, and also due to Corona, there's a lack of tourism, so prices went up naturally, but it gives a rough idea. So I will not mention everything here, but what's important here for sure are the Casa Particulares. You can calculate here with $20 to $30 per night per person. And there is breakfast already included in this price. But a meal in a restaurant, for example, you pay about $10. It depends very, of course. In Havana, it's always a little bit more expensive than in the rest of the island. So, and also where it's a little bit more expensive is the high season, which is December to March. The prices are slightly higher. So what I did, I linked also a very helpful blog I found in the internet in the slides. So no worries, you can receive the slides here after the presentation, after submitting the feedback formula. We will get back later on that. So, and at a last note, it is not legal to take Cuban money, so Cuban pesos outside of Cuba with you. So I think you should just spend the rest of the money to some good cocktails. So we have some more tips to share with you. So we would like to give some general tips before you travel to Cuba. So of course, when we start off, we would recommend to print any documents needed to travel to Cuba and check out all your entry requirements for your country, because most nationalities in the world actually are required to need a visa for Cuba. There are only a few countries who need no visa. Secondly, we recommend you to plan your trip by packing appropriately, because certain products might not always be available on Cuba. For example, some hygiene products, at least that's what I've experienced.
And the third point that we would like to highlight is if you want to bring some Cuban products with you to your home country, for example, alcohol or cigars, please check the custom regulations beforehand, because in most of the cases, there are restrictions on how much you can actually take with you. And also it could happen to you that you meet some very friendly locals, but you should keep in mind that sometimes it could be tourist traps. So for example, we have heard that you will see people on the streets who would want to bring you to a specific restaurant, and it could happen that you would have to pay for their service later. Most importantly, please don't forget to be mindful of the local culture and to respect the country.
So and since the internet in Cuba and the current situation with the pandemic are like topic for itself, we would like to go into more detail with those points. So Akshay, what is the special internet situation in Cuba?
Of course. So the internet in Cuba is not in the form that most travelers are used to. So I would like to explain this in detail, so you'll have no issues when you travel to Cuba. So firstly, you can purchase a Nauta internet card and connect it to the ETESA Wi-Fi network, which is Cuban's local telecommunication company. Then you will need to add your username and password from the card. So I have actually shown you pictures of the cards as well. And you can purchase them at hotels, airports, business centers, and ETESA office. And the cost is between $1 to $5 and usually available for 30 minutes, 1 hour, and 5-hour blocks. And it's valid for 30 days. And also, there are a lot of hotspots where you can jump on public Wi-Fi very quickly. They are usually available in popular public parks and plazas. Finally, most hotels, resorts, and casa particulars have Wi-Fi for their guests. Additionally, I would like to provide you some helpful tips for convenient internet usage. So first and most importantly, disconnect from your apps after using it, or else you'll have to lose your data because it'll just continue to run in the background. And even if you are not staying at the hotel, some hotels will let you use desktop computers in their business center. And if you have difficulty connecting to the internet in Cuba, it'll be best to save important documents as screenshots so that you can always have it offline with you. And some websites and apps do not work in Cuba, so kindly download important apps before you travel. And please keep in mind that G Suite as well is blocked in Cuba.
So yeah, for as you all know, with the current situation with Corona, we have like I pictured it very roughly how the entrance procedure is in Cuba. And this information, of course, as you all know, the situation can change very quick in general. So there's no guarantee for the information. I took this information from the German government side, which is usually a very reliable source, but this can also change tomorrow. This information is still from today. So how is it going? Everyone traveling to Cuba must have a certified proof of a negative result of a PCR test taken not older than 72 hours from a testing center. So everyone going to Cuba will have a PCR test on arrival in addition. So you show your certificate and you will have another PCR test. And then after this PCR test, of course, this is subject to what was the result of this PCR test. So if the PCR test was negative and you booked a hotel, then you would actually have to stay in the hotel for 5 more days, because then is another test. And from this another test, you will get the test result like 1 until 2 days afterwards. So after 7 days, you should be fine. If you have booked a casa particular for your first night, you have to stay in a hotel, which the government tells you. And of course, this is everything at your own expenses. And then you have to stay in the hotel for those 5 to 7 days doing the second test. And then you can go to your casa particular. If your PCR test at the airport is positive, then you have to go directly to the hospital or one of the state-owned health centers. And there you would stay for a minimum of 8 days. And yeah, then of course depends on how your health progresses, how the tests are. And anyone who is traveling with you, if you are positive, they will also have to self-isolate themselves and have another PCR test if their PCR test was negative on the airport. So in addition to all the barriers here, Cuba is on a strict lockdown at the moment. So most businesses are actually closed and public transport inside the country is limited. So once Corona is over, we could highly recommend you to visit Cuba again. At the moment, it's just problematic, like on most countries in the world. So, and if you want to have more insight how it's possible for you to travel responsibly during the pandemic, we want to share some more tips on here, where to travel and how to travel best. So then you're best served with our webinar. The registration link for this webinar, How to Travel Safely this Summer, this will be posted in the chat after the trip presentation.
Perfect. So now that we've provided you with all the important information to travel to Cuba, so our agenda for the next following slides is to introduce you to an itinerary that was created by one of our Join My Trips trip leader, Evelina. So Evelina traveled to Cuba in 2019 with 8 trip mates. So this is her itinerary. So before that, if you are curious to know how you can become a trip leader yourself on our platform, then I would highly recommend you to attend our trip leader webinar. So in this webinar, we will show you how to perfectly set up a trip on our platform, the best way to promote it and to earn money with trip planning, all by exploring the world with group of soon-to-be friends. We planned we planned a trip for US this Thursday and one for Europe next Wednesday. So feel free to join that and the link will be posted at the end.
Yeah, but first of all, we want to give our audience like a short geographical orientation. I think most of you know where Cuba actually is. So it's the largest island in the Caribbean. It's close to the USA. So since most of you have been there, I hope you all know where it is. So on the map here, you can see the itinerary of Evelina, which is basically a road trip around the whole island with 10 stops in total. So the whole trip took 14 days and you can do that without stress. The slide design maybe looks familiar with you since this is also how the itineraries on our platform look like. So this journey will start in Havana. It's the well-known capital of Cuba. What I really liked was the really relaxed atmosphere and the lifestyle. So Havana has plenty of bars and restaurants to offer. You will always find some live music. And I also connected with some locals in the parks there. This is pretty cool. And popular museum would be the Museum of Revolution. So this Museum of Revolution, the building itself was once the presidential palace. And therefore, it's even more worth the visit. I really liked the interior there. Of course, in addition to the historical information of Cuba. A great place to be is also Old Havana, the part of the city where we have very neoclassical and also Baroque buildings. And what I also can recommend is Morro Castle, where every night a cannon is fired at 9 p.m., which was once used to signal the close of the city gates.
So our second stop is Jardins del Rey, which is a collection of islands. The best one to visit is Cayo Coco, and there are a lot of water sports and leisure activities with beach, having coral reef and abundant forest vegetation that is home to diverse fauna. So you can spot some pink flamingos and you can get through to the island by over-the-sea link that is also well connected by domestic flight. So the next stop would be Baracoa, which is Cuba's best kept secret as it is the oldest town in Cuba. You will find the best of both worlds here. So forest-clad mountains, serene blue waters, and secluded coves. What will be really amazing to do is to trek to the top of El Unique. The view is apparently truly special and it's a great spot for bird and nature spotting. And if you are lucky, you might get a glimpse of Tocororo, which is Cuba's national bird, and the bee hummingbird, which is the world's smallest bird.
Yeah, so next we go to Santiago de Cuba. I have not been there myself, unfortunately, but I heard that this is such a passionate city as well. So if you travel in July, then there is a carnival that takes place there. So basically, it's a lot of colorful costumes and dancing and music, of course. So next we go to Trinidad. I have been to Trinidad. It's a very lovely city and you can have a good view by climbing there on the top of the bell tower in the city center. There is also a good connection to the Playa Ancon. It's a beach nearby the city. And also the Valley of the Sugar Mills is a great place to visit. So there you can find many historical sugar mills, and you will find towers where you have a great view and can take good pictures. And you will also find some abandoned trains, which you saw in the picture before, because there was also like a former train station there. And for the people who are into nightlife, you should definitely check out the Disco Ayala, which is basically a nightclub in a cave and therefore has a really unique atmosphere. I really loved it there. So what should be also part of your trip to Trinidad is Topes de Colantes, which will be right nearby the city.
Yeah. So Topes de Colantes is a natural reserve that stretches for 80 kilometers. Here, there are a lot of flora and fauna again, and you can visit this place and just get lost in nature. There are a number of different paths and routes that allow you to discover the beauty of its landscape. The rivers create a very deep valley in the mountain. Then there are unevenness that will give rise to very impressive waterfalls. So our next stop would be El Nico, so which is a part of Topes de Colantes. So what you can do here is to experience swimming in the wild. And once you get to the top of El Nico, the views are a typical Cuban landscape. So a lot of palm and banana trees for miles and lush green rolling hills.
Yeah, so there was also a question in the chat, what is the best time of the year to visit Cuba? So one can say it's basically December to March, since it's the dry season there, so we'll have a really good temperature there. I've been there in April, it was still okay. So let's say December until April, it's really good to visit Cuba. But as I said before, the prices will be a little bit higher there. So keep that in mind. So next we go to Cienfuegos. Cienfuegos is actually famous for its city center. So, which you can also see from a lookout tower in the Ferrer Places. It is an historical building from the late 19th century, and you could also see it on the pictures here. It was that big blue building. And what I also liked there was the Malecon. So, yeah, let's call it the shore, basically, where you should have a walk in the evening and see the sunset. So this is basically how it looks like. I'm actually one of the guys here in the pictures. Really loved it. So, this is a good place to stay for one night after visiting El Nicho. So in Vinales, what you can do there is the horse riding we mentioned in the beginning, and reach the farms to having like coffee and tobacco. You can't miss it. There's plenty of offers for it, like to the horse riding and to see the landscape and the rural Cuba. That's pretty great. And this ride itself also sticks to my mind, and you can do really good pictures there.
So next is that we are back to Havana again, and you should definitely not definitely not miss the visit of Cuban Art Factory, which is a big complex providing music, food, and art exhibitions. And never mind to plan to go there multiple times, since you will always find something new there. So take some calm last days before it's time to leave Cuba again. Now, our next trip is not a part of the itinerary, but we thought we could share that with you because Robin has been to Santa Carla. So a place which is but it's worth the stop, since this is the place where the famous Che Guevara Museum is. And there is a museum inside and also a small cave as a memory for people who have fought in the revolution. In the whole complex, you should behave respectfully because, for example, not laugh, because in the cave, even talking is forbidden. In Santa Carla, you will find the monument of armored train, which was sent by a Batista regime to fight against the revolution and stopped by Che Guevara in the end. So please do visit that as well.
Yeah, so the presentation of the trip is over now, but like we said before, it's not like you have to do that. It just serves as an inspiration. What is doable in 2 weeks, what you could do. It's a great road trip for sure. So maybe you're hopefully excited to plan your own trip to Cuba as a trip leader, or join a trip to there, or any destination you want, basically. So just check out our platform. Maybe you will find a cool trip which you can join, and otherwise you just make your own trip and publish it.
Perfect. If we've made you curious about more destinations, then we would recommend you to register yourself for the Finland webinar, which is hosted by our 2 team members from Finland. It will take place on Wednesday in 2 weeks at the same time. And 2 weeks after Finland, the next travel inspiration webinar will take place, and it will be a country of your choice now. So we have 5 countries for you, and we can start the poll for 30 seconds or so, and we can see where we are going next. And
so yeah, I will start it. Wait a minute. Yeah, okay. So you should all see it now. Okay. Yeah,
I've
so this
actually
will
been
be.
to Turkey, so Turkey is my favorite place.
Yeah, Turkey is your favorite, right?
So
There's a hard race between like more or less
Greece.
equal. This, yeah. Okay, yeah. I think we have a winner.
Perfect. So
It's
great
Greece.
then. I think it's Greece.
Yeah.
So yeah, I am looking forward to that webinar as well, which will take place 4 weeks from now. And we have another webinar planned for you. So if you wonder what our co-working trips are all about, we have some information for you on how to plan your perfect co-working trip on our platform. So the registration link for each webinars can be found in the chat. And before you leave, your opinion really matters to us. So we have linked the feedback form as well. So Robin and I would really appreciate it if you provide us your feedback. And after providing your feedback today, you will receive the slides for this presentation.
So yeah, thanks all for being here tonight. It was a pleasure for us. And Akshay, do you have something to say?
No, thank you so much for being here, and we enjoyed the presentation. I hope you all did as well.
Yeah, thanks, and don't forget the feedback form, please. We really rely on it, and you will get the slides afterwards. And yeah, I would looking forward to see you all in the other webinars we have to offer. Like, we have so many different topics, and you also chose Greece as a destination in 4 weeks. So I hope we can see us all at least in 4 weeks to the next destination, which is Greece. And Finland is in 2 weeks. So this will be presented from our 2 Finnish nationals from our team. So you can have also like a pretty good insight of that, of course.
Yeah, more like a local insight.
Yeah, a local insight, yeah. Pretty hard, yeah. So thanks for joining, and see you next time, I hope.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you too. Very nice.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye,
Thank you very
guys.
much.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.